Okay, so hello there. Welcome to Athena Heard, another episode of our podcast where we're talking to some of our friends and colleagues around the equine world. This morning, we're going to be talking a little bit about well-being, both well-being for our horses and for humans too. And in that context, we're going to be joined by Jane Gilby of Natural Answer, who's going to tell us a little bit or talk to us a little bit about her work with flower essences and how flower essences can be used or worked with both to support human and equine well-being and wellness. So welcome, Jane. Lovely to meet you. And Jennifer's here with us as well, who's going to be asking you some questions and leading us through that discussion. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Jennifer, and then we can give you a little bit of space, Jane, as well, to introduce yourself as well. So Jennifer, over to you.
Thank you, Graham. Yeah, thanks, guys. And yeah, real pleasure to be here. And actually, for me, I'm really keen to learn a little bit more about floral essences and and how we can make use of them really in this space. So good morning, Jane. Really lovely to have you here.
Morning, Jennifer. Morning, Graham. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a real pleasure.
You're very welcome. And would you mind maybe just taking a minute just to introduce yourself, just to tell us a little bit about your journey, maybe, and how you came about working with floral essences, and tell us a little bit more about yourself, Jane, if that's okay.
Yeah, hello. Right. Well, yes. So I've probably discovered them several years ago now, nearly 30 years ago, actually, sort of quite by accident. And I started looking into them for some personal use. And I worked for a vet at the time, and when I was chatting to him about it, and he actually knew of them and was quite keen to utilise them within our practice. So that kind of sent me on a journey of learning how to use them. And those original ones that I first started learning about were called the batch flower remedies, which I think are the more well-known ones that some of our listeners may have heard of, especially the rescue remedy. So that led me on a really big journey of sort of self-discovery and then finding out about more ranges. And I was really hooked on it. But aside from the essences, I've kind of also gone down a journey with my own horses. So I'm also an equine touch practitioner. I do Reiki and other energy work alongside the flower and vibrational essences. And also, more recently, of course, I've joined Athena and done my equine facilitated learning certificate. So that's a bit about my background. We also live on a farm, and so I have kind of like a holistic practice where I'm helping people and animals with the integrated therapies.
That's amazing. Thank you, Jane, and thanks for sharing. And yeah, no, definitely. I've heard of the batch remedies myself, and like you say, I think you can sort of pop into Boots and and maybe more mainstream places. And actually, it's really interesting. I was looking at a website the other day for horse herbs, and actually, when I came across them, I was really surprised. So I think the more you're aware of them, and and the more you actually start to see them, you start to have more of an awareness that they're there. So for me, could you maybe start talking me through, what are the differences? What sort of floral essences are there out there? And this is sort of the essential oil element to all of this, or maybe they're different. So maybe you could just talk us through some of that, Jane. That'd be really helpful.
Yes, certainly. Well, they are different from essential oils because they're much lighter. It's not actually using any sort of physical part of the plant the way they're made. It's actually kind of a transference of energy. So sort of almost the energetic imprint of either flowers, possibly trees. It could be crystals. So this is why it's broader. It's not just flower essences. They tend to be called vibrational essences because they basically carry the energetic signature of whatever that essence is made from. And it's made kind of in spring water, and often the most common way of making them is sort of sitting them in the sun. So you get this kind of synergy, an alchemic sort of thing where the sun actually helps to help that release that essence and energy into the water. So then you have this thing, sort of dosage bottle that you can use. Yeah,
Sorry, Jane,
certainly.
does that tie in with what people might recognise around also homeopathy that works at that vibrational level? Is
That's
that
actually
correct?
what
That's
I
my
was thinking,
understanding. Yeah.
Graham. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, homeopathy, you know, is kind of dilutions, and we do dilute essences similarly. You start off with a mother tincture, and then it goes down to a stock bottle, and then it's diluted further. You can actually take it direct from the stock bottle, but we usually dilute further to make up a dosage bottle or a spray. And some of the sprays may have essential oils added to them as well, so they have like additional properties in there. Yeah, but the actual essence is very light. It's more of an energetic thing.
Brilliant. And so that's really what the essential oils is.
Essential oils are heavier. They would actually have a piece of the actual plant. So it's I think it's done by distillation, and that's the actual oil of the plant extracted. And they can be quite physical in their action. In fact, you know, you've got to be quite careful with them. Whereas flower essences are incredibly safe, very light. It's just really the energetic imprint of that plant.
Brilliant.
And you know, we all have a frequency. You know, science recognises we're all energy. Everything is energy and has a frequency. So they kind of work by restoring balance and harmony, interacting with the energy system of the being that's taking them.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thank you, Jane. And again, just, you know, when I look around, when I'm sort of, you know, looking at websites or you know, maybe looking at maybe some of the batch remedies, there's different types. There's different things, isn't there? Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on that for me. Just, you know, just to talk about the different ones that are out there.
Yes, certainly. Well, yes, there's actually, I mean, Dr. Edward Batch first created the batch flower remedies in the early 1920s. He created a range of 38 remedies, all their flowers and tree essences, but they're actually much older than that. The ancient Egyptians would have known how to utilise plant and flower energy, other civilisations like the Australian Aborigines, and kind of after Dr. Batch in the UK, quite a few more ranges started to spring up with producers creating really big ranges like the Alaskan essences, Australian bush, there's some from the Amazon, they're all over. In fact, and now it's gone to the point that we have loads of much smaller producers making their own little ranges or individual essences. So it's really kind of taken off in the last sort of 10, 20 years. And the differences are really, the flowers tend to act as more as a catalyst for health, for growth and change. To illuminate, they help support you through changes. And then we have crystal essences. They are a little bit more giving you kind of a little bit of an energetic matrix and structure to sort of strength to help move through the healing process. And then you can also have environmental essences, which are often made in really beautiful places, sort of, or places with amazing sort of wild sort of natural spaces like sort of waterfalls, glaciers, that kind of thing. So they tend to carry with them the energetic imprint of the space. So it could be a really vibrant energy, which is again just helping if someone's sort of unwell or have, you know, even going through a sort of emotional crisis, having that sort of strength and motivation and oomph, you know, and energy to carry on through that process is really useful. So there's so many different types.
So Jane, why would I need to know, or how would I know that this is the sort of thing for me? A floral essence might help me here, or how might I know that a floral essence might be just the sort of thing to help my animal or my horse in a situation?
Well, I mean, they primarily work more on an emotional level, and they can help sort of with behavioural type things, but primarily emotional. And so yeah, if you know, it could be sort of help with passing moods, or it could be help with much more deeper issues if you're wanting to kind of work on layers and for you know, or bring awareness. That's another thing flower essences often will do. So they could help with things like limiting beliefs, needing more confidence, self-worth issues, helping with trauma release, bereavement. They're very supportive, very gentle. Can be taken alongside other medicines, so that, you know, it's something that people could just reach for, you know, anytime. You can just pop a few drops in a glass of water, or it's something you could work with perhaps with the help of someone like myself, you know, if you want to kind of unravel things, or you've got some perhaps childhood issues that you're finding are coming up and causing you issues now. you could start to work on those things with a more bespoke sort of structured type of dosage, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as you know, as Graham has sort of started to talk about, and I was actually just thinking, because obviously some of the environmental essential oils floral essences sound really quite amazing. But if I actually wanted something a bit more personalised, how would I go about that, Jane? Do you offer a service or?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I do. I'm an advanced practitioner registered with the BFVEA, which is our sort of governing body, and I can do Zoom consultations, or when things allow, in person, and basically we'll sort of take a bit of a history, have a chat through, just kind of find out what the issues are for the person, and then from that, or for the animal, and from that you can then deduce, start to sort of select ones that I feel would be appropriate.
Okay.
And there's various ways of me doing that as well. That's you can either kind of just be looking them up. I mean, I must have thousands over the years. I've really accumulated loads all around the world. So you can't possibly learn every single one. So I've got lots of books. So you can look them up. Some of the ranges have really lovely card decks, so you can get people to sort of feel through the cards. They're beautiful photographs of the flowers and things on. And then they might be drawn to certain ones, so that can give an indication of what might help them. So you can really involve the client, if it's a human, like in the process, so they feel quite empowered to be helping themselves. Or there's another way, which is a little bit more mystical perhaps, is dowsing, where you could use a pendulum and you can just see what comes up with a yes or no, and then you can look at them and read and see, does that seem appropriate? And that can be quite telling, because especially with an animal who can't obviously tell you what's wrong, you're only getting their human sort of interpretation. And sometimes I would pick up a few sort of random strange things would throw up. You get several essences might come out that you think, yeah, I can relate to what the person's told me, that seems really appropriate. And then there might be something that actually gives us all a little hidden sort of clue as to what else is going on with the animal. So
how would you douse that, Jane? Jane, sorry. So how would you douse that? That's a very interesting. Or actually, probably, what's dowsing for some of our listeners? People aren't going to know what dowsing is. So what's dowsing, and how can that be?
So dowsing is a means of it's quite an old sort of traditional thing that used to be used years back. A lot of the druids and things, sort of scrying. But it's basically you have a pendulum, and you kind of ask you set your intention, can you please give me, you can't answer too many things, but it's just mainly yes and no. So I would ask, what is oh, you've got one there. Yeah. So what would this animal need for their highest good, for the condition we've just discussed, or whatever? You set your intention, you ask the question, and I will just move over my boxes, because I've got so hundreds of them. I go over a box. Is there anything in this box? Is there anything in this box? Yes, there's something in this box. Is it the one in this row? Is it this row? Is it this row? And because you're going over them quite fast, it might start to give you a yes before I've actually hit the one. So I might have to really dial down on a couple, 2 or 3 that are sitting close to one another. And then I still would then look up their application and think, and possibly the one either side of it, and think, yes, that feels very appropriate. That one isn't. But so you can't really go too wrong, because they're incredibly safe, and the body will only it will self-regulate with them, so it will only take what it needs, and take that, if it doesn't, then it just won't have any effect. So that's kind of a brief how dowsing works. Yeah.
And is it when you're working with a floral essence, is it an immediate shift, or is it immediate change? Is it a program? Is it something that happens over time?
It can be very immediate. I mean, I've seen some amazing sort of miraculous things, and people have reported, wow, I felt a shift almost immediately. So it depends on what it is, and some of the essence ranges are much more subtle, and unless you're kind of using that type of thing a lot, you might even miss what's happened, and it's not until you talk to the person and they sort of say, no, I don't really notice anything, and then they'll suddenly say, oh, but I did. I was doing that the other day, and I said, well, you weren't confident to do that before. Oh, yeah, they'll have an epiphany. So it can be quite subtle. Others, however, it's like, wow, I feel really different. Something's shifted almost immediately. Yeah. No, and again, I suppose it depends a bit as well. If it's something, I think it will move quicker if it's an acute thing. So if someone's in a real sort of upset state, or even it's a mild sort of passing emotion, that will probably shift quite quickly. But if it's more deeper issues, you might find, well, actually that's brought up some reflections, and I've been thinking about this, or maybe I had a dream about that, and it's made me think about a deeper issue. So we start to unravel, you know, where's that come from, and we reflect on it and we go a bit deeper, and that way we can sort of get more to the sort of childhood issues. So someone that's perhaps working or wanting help with more deeper issues, I normally recommend sort of at least 3 sessions to kind of work through and then reflect on how that first treatment bottle or dosage bottle has affected them, how they feel after that, and then we take it sort of to the next step. But so there's lots of ways you can interact and use them, you know, from a very superficial level to much deeper things.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because that was going to be my next question, actually, Jane, you know, around, you know, do you generally see, you know, do you have follow-up conversations with people? So that's really interesting. Again, I think if you pop out to Boots, it's not something you would have thought about. So, you know, obviously having a more tailored approach, I can really see the benefits, you know, the benefits of those. And I just want to go back to your intro a little bit, actually, because you mentioned the, you know, your background started through the veterinary practice. And I, you know, I found that really interesting, because I know definitely here at Athena Herd with the horses, I do tend to try a mix of, you know, sort of herbal remedies before maybe necessarily reaching out to the vet. You know, obviously the vet does have its place, but, you know, I do tend to try you know, other different approaches before I consider that maybe I do need to involve the vet. So I think maybe just hearing a little bit about, you know, would I need to go to the vet, you know, with you know, with the work that you offer with the floral essences, or is this something that I could maybe just start to look at?
No, definitely you can start to look at them yourself. Yeah, because I mean, when I first qualified as an essence practitioner, we did have to ask vets permission. But in our organisation, they work very hard to kind of get them relisted, so that rather than being a minor medicine, they're actually now classed as a food supplement. So we no longer have to ask the vet's permission, although sometimes I still might, if it's a case that's got some physical issues going on, because we're not allowed as practitioners to diagnose or claim to treat. So we're really only helping on an emotional sort of mental level. However, Dr. Batch always sort of said that you absolutely recognise the mind, emotion and body link. So by bringing the emotions back into harmony and balance and our energetic system, so, you know, the physical health can then follow. So, you know, in a roundabout way, it can help physical things, but that's what we would normally just say. It's for emotional type things. Yeah, so yes, you can start to experiment yourself, and a lot of the essence ranges do now actually make combinations, which are a lot easier for people, especially if you're just getting into it or just want to try. So they'll have like a combination of flowers, or maybe some flowers and gems, or even a few environmental essences thrown in there, and they would have names like, you know, for what they're for. So it might be, you know, supreme confidence, or worthiness, or abundance, or trauma. So they'll have names like that, you know, or lighten up. So it's you kind of get what it's about, you know, what that's meant to help with.
But a simplistic level, is that like if I were to go and buy Dr. Batch's rescue remedy, for example? Is that
rescue remedy
a simple comparison? I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely, because rescue remedy's got sort of 5 different essences in it, so that's a combination made specifically for kind of trauma and rescue situations, any little emergency, or, you know, and so it might not be kind of getting right to the core of an issue, but certainly in the moment that could be just what you need, you know. So yeah, lots of them are doing those now, and so that's a good way for people to sort of try it. And, you know, those bottles tend to come in stock bottles, or in possibly a spray. So you've got the option of using it. The stock bottle will actually go so far, because you only need a couple of drops to make up a little dosage bottle, or you could make your own sprays up from that and add your own essential oils or other things you want in it. For your own use, that's fine. You've got to be a bit careful with essential oils and animals for some, and pregnant women, because there's certain essential oils are quite strong. But yeah, you could, if you're adding them just for your own use, that's absolutely fine. It's very economical to do it that way as well, actually. Whereas if you wanted, like me, and I got obsessed and wanted to learn so much more about it, buying all the little individual bottles, if they're big ranges, can be quite expensive. And you tend to find when you start looking and reading into the descriptions, you think, oh my goodness, I need all of those. I need so many.
It's a bit like having a medical dictionary at home, isn't it?
Yeah.
Suddenly you have everything.
Yeah.
Oh, bless you, Jane. Sorry, Glenn, you're gonna...
I was going to say, so is there a sort of a case study? Is there a story that you have, if you like, or an example that you could give us that might bring this to life for people, or for our listeners?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I was thinking about that. There's quite a few actually, but I thought I'd put on a very recent one for my friend's horse.
Lovely.
Been helping her. So basically, I've known Rory. He's a Highland pony. Known him for a long time, and my friend Sharon. He's always been a very laid back and confident pony. But a while back now, she lost his companion, a little Ernie, through colic. So then she has one other horse, but she decided to get a third one to sort of make the numbers back up, and it entered a thoroughbred mare. So
always good to have one more horse.
Yeah. My friend does love thoroughbred mares, so she kind of, against better judgment maybe, I don't know, but she got this lovely mare who, because it changed the whole dynamic. So Mystery the mare has latched onto and bonded with her Andalusian guapo, and so Rory's been a bit left out. He's often isolated semi anyway, because he's had trouble with laminitis, he has Cushing's. So you have to often have him on a track and the others are on better grass. So there's always been this little bit of having to separate him, but he always used to have his little Minnie as a companion. So that he seemed okay after losing Ern, but several months went past and the new mare came in, and then he started to get a lot more reactive and less confident, and not unmotivated, not really wanting to do anything, being quite braced and frightened and jumpy, things that normally wouldn't have bothered him at all. So there was this sort of tension in him and tightness. And then one day, she didn't know what happened, but something occurred out in the field, and she went to get him in, and he actually was in such a panic, he kind of broke over the wall, grazed all his hock, and you know, was terribly difficult to get back to his stable. So we kind of started to investigate what it was. Of course, none of us knew because no one had seen what had happened, but we surmised there'd maybe been some sort of bullying or herding going on with, you know, and he'd got frightened. So when checking out what he needed, yes, I did come up with trauma. I've actually written a few down for him. And there's a lovely range called Spirited Nature Essences, which have been made, the lady designed for animals. And one for, you wouldn't believe it, but you can actually get an essence for lettuce. And lettuce is actually for calmness.
Wow.
And so we had calmness, we had orange, which was for enthusiasm, to try and, you know, get him more motivated and back to his normal self. From another range came up one for trauma. And then another range came up Grove Sandwort, which is an essence in the Alaskan system, which is very much for reconnecting, grounding, for kind of feeling that support and energetic connection with the earth. It's very good for addressing for animals that may have had a weak connection with a mother, lack of bonding and that kind of thing. And we also had something in there for grief for Rory. So it kind of made sense that perhaps actually he was grieving for his lost companion. And that was possibly the original trigger that has made him feel more vulnerable, less safe, less confident. And then having this mare come in and have the dynamic change in the herd group, it's all just kind of escalated until his triggers are sort of that high. Then we've had this instance where he's had an accident. So we gave him the essence, and literally the following morning, Sharon reported he's come out of his stable like voluntarily, because she leaves the doors open for him to wander, but she's got her own yard. And things like he wouldn't eat from a hay net. Like had stopped, and he was such a greedy pony. He'd stopped eating from a hay net. He'd been picky with his food. So lots of things. He was really depressed and shut down, as well as hyper braced and reactive. So literally the next day, she said he's shown interest in his surroundings. He's come out of the stable. He's picking at a hay net. He's eating his food, and gradually, I mean, he's still a work in progress. He's due to have another consult, another lot of essences, but he has moved on an awful lot. He's certainly much more his normal self. Still a little bit funny, cagey if the bear comes near him. So we definitely think there was something going on there. So she's got to be careful with that. But definitely he's starting to feel more his usual self. So that was really nice. I was really pleased how that one came about, really.
Can I ask a quick question there? So when you say you gave them to Rory, how would you go about doing that? Just for my knowledge, really.
Yeah, so
maybe anybody else
Good
is
question.
listening as well, I don't know.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I basically, from the essences that were dowsed and chosen for him, I made up a little dosage bottle, which is basically a 30 ml dropper bottle.
Brilliant.
And for horses and most animals, I'd recommend not trying to actually get the pipette in their mouth because it's glass and it could break. So we normally suggest just putting it in the water. I check to see kind of like how often to dose, and normally it's like once or twice a day. I tend to say with horses it's in the water, or you could put it on a little piece of apple or something, or
so they actually eat it. Brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, you can put it in their food, but I tend to think it could get knocked about and some thrown out, so putting it on a small tree is better. Something that the water will absorb into, so I tend to make a little hole in an apple and pop it in there, or a piece, just a little piece of apple or something. Carrots it rolls off of. I've tried, obviously, with horses myself. I've tried lots of methods.
All hints and tips are always gratefully received.
Yeah, yeah. But with people, you'd normally just pop a few drops under your tongue or in a glass of water. So you've taken that way.
Brilliant. No, that's really helpful. And maybe it would just be helpful to give us a bit of an idea of the pricing.
Sure.
And maybe how do people go about contacting you or maybe booking an appointment with you, Jane?
Yes, certainly. Well, I mean, if you're just wanting to try something like the Rescue Remedy or something you can buy in, say, Holland and Barrett's or Boots, I think it's been a while since I've been in there to buy anything like that, but they're relatively cheap. I think they're only like a Rescue Remedy is probably about £5 or something, around about that figure.
So really quite accessible then.
They are, yeah. Most of the combinations, if they come in bigger, usually they're in bigger bottles, 30 ml bottles, they might be around, they all differ slightly because they're different producers, and some have to be imported, so they're from abroad. So they're normally, those combination ones I was talking about are around the figure of like sort of anything between sort of £7 or £8 up to say 12. And the sprays tend to be kind of between 10 or 11 up to sort of 15 if you have a combination spray. Individual essences, again, from various ranges, they do vary from about £3 or £4 up to say maybe 7 or 8, sometimes more. It just depends on the producer. That's if you were kind of buying those. And there's a couple of major suppliers in the UK that I would use, which have lots of ranges. So that's Universal Essences and Health Lines. So if anyone's interested, they can always pop me a message or something, and I can send a PDF with some people on. I mean, I'm starting to stock strength essences to sell on, but I don't have a huge range at the moment. So I tend to be at the moment, my work is more if someone would like a bespoke bottle made up. Now, if they've done their research and they think I'd like to try this, and this, I'm very happy to just make a dosage bottle and send it out to someone. With just a little brief on how to take it. If, on the other hand, they're not sure what they want as far as individual essences go, and they want some support from me, then it's more a consultation, and that can be done via Zoom. Normally, or it can be in person, and normally it's £60 with that includes your first dosage bottle, and then subsequent follow-up consults normally drop to 40 and includes their bottles. So you can sort of, you can roughly work out if you wanted support, and that you could spread those consults out over you could do it fortnightly or monthly or whatever. Some people might even require to work for longer. They might want to go 6 months, 6 sessions or over 6 months or something like that.
So we can put your contact details. Jane, is what we'll do is we'll put your contact details on the website or on the supporting page on the website when this is posted. So if you're listening now, that you can go to the website and you can see Jane's details and how to contact Jane as well. So that would be
wonderful. Thank you.
So I think that would
brilliant.
Be a good one. Sorry,
thank you.
No, thank you, Jane. Well, it's been really, really informative. I mean, it's definitely something that I'd love to maybe get a little bit more into myself. So I think it's been really helpful to give us a bit of an oversight, and get a really good idea of the differences, and how to go about looking at some of this really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Graham, Graham, I don't know. Have you got anything else that you'd like to?
No, I mean, I have come across, in the past, I've come across some work that people have done with floral essences. I've
Okay.
heard very, very good feedback, particularly in the context of horses, and particularly in the context of people making specific elixirs for different circumstances or different situations, things like bereavement or something like that you talked about. So I have heard very positive things about them. I've had the personal experience occasionally, sometimes in the past, of actually taking rescue remedy as well myself. So I know the immediacy of that effect. So Jane, I mean, it's a huge subject, and it's one of those things I think we could talk about easily for hours and hours.
Yeah.
But I think what we really wanted to do here this morning was to help people get an introduction to the idea and sort of, you know, what they are and how one could engage with them. And I think that's been really useful. Thank you. And it might be worth, if you want to give me a link as well to somewhere that people can just look up if there is a general this flower, this essence is good for this sort of thing. So if there's a sort of a little crosstab that people could look at online as well, just to give themselves a little bit of a bit more insight into how we can work with these oils.
Yes, certainly. I shall do that. I shall make sure I put together a couple of links to, say, some of the key sort of websites. Fantastic. And certainly if you Google flower essences for a certain condition, you'll get loads come up.
Okay.
I might also, in the spring, I haven't set any dates yet, but I'm hoping to kind of reintroduce some workshops that I was working on last year before the lockdowns.
Wonderful.
Which was sort of more of a, like possibly an introduction to essences for working with animals, or, you know, for horses or animal owners, or maybe one for people, kind of for some of the things, because they could also be very, very helpful for in the field of EFL work, you know, if people wanted to sort of try them themselves, you know, for a lot of the issues we would find that people tend to come to us with. So that could help them support their journey, you know.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jane. Excellent.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good idea, Jane, and I'd definitely be looking out for those dates. Will they go up on your website?
Yes, they will do, definitely.
Brilliant. Yeah. We'll all keep a lookout for those.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Marvellous. Well, thank you, Jane. Thank you for talking with us this morning. It's been really informative. I'm really looking forward to sharing this with everybody.
Thank you very much. No, it's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jane.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
We
Thanks, guys.
Look forward to seeing you again soon.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.